time for us to learn about one of the other awesome tools built into Unity, which is its physics system. Comes with Unity out of the box, and we just need to learn how to work with it. What I've done in my scene is set up my sphere. I re-enabled it and I moved it above this mountain. I also gave it a bit of a material color so that we can see it a little bit more obviously. And what I want to do now is actually get physics enabled and then see it in action. The physics system only actually works once we're in play mode. Right now, if I press play, what is it that I'm going to see? Well, this is a pretty awkward perspective. Why is this scene looking from that perspective? Well, it's because my camera is down at that corner in a really weird position. I'm going to double click on my sphere to go back to it. I can just double click on those objects to zoom to them. And I want to bring my camera up here. We don't know how to move it around in the play session yet, but how do I get my camera up here nice and fast? Well, if I choose my sphere, click on these three dots under transform, I can go copy component. And that's going to copy all of the values in its transform. Then I'm going to select my camera, click these three dots, and go paste component values. That's going to give my camera the same positional and scaling, although scaling doesn't really matter for the camera. I'll just change it back to ones, as my sphere. So now the camera is up here. And notice my camera preview, it's got nice and close. So now I can just kind of easily move it so it has a better perspective. I actually want to make my camera maybe a little bit up. I'm going to choose my rotation tool and rotate it downwards so that I have a bit of a top-down view. And cool. Now if I press play, I have a little bit of a more helpful perspective. Now I can start thinking about my physics system. Let's click on the terrain and look at something under our settings really quick. The terrain has attached to it a collider. This is a component. Every single menu under our inspector that we can open up or close down is a component. The transform is a component. The terrain itself is a component, and the terrain collider is a component. Pretty soon, we're going to be adding our own custom components, but if we just type in collider for a sec, we see there's a whole bunch of options: box, capsule, circle. Maybe you see a trend that these match up with the primitive types of shapes in our program. All sorts of colliders we can attach, and a collider is the system that allows things to interact with one another. Let's go back to our sphere. Our sphere was automatically built with a collider, meaning that it has the ability to detect an interaction with anything else that has a collider. Sometimes you might accidentally remove it, or some ways that you build objects, it might not come with a collider. If you have a shape without a collider, here I would just go sphere collider and add it. I'll just do this manual adding here. Now I have two. I actually don't need two, so I can right click and remove component. This needs to have one. But only having colliders isn't enough. I need some physics. And the physics system in Unity is processed through something called a rigid body. Make sure in our 3D worlds you use the regular rigid body and not the 2D version. With that enabled, I see some information: mass, drag, angular drag, use gravity. We're going to ignore everything actually entirely other than mass and use gravity. In fact, for now, mass doesn't even matter. Mass will come into play when we have things colliding with one another and you want them to behave like real-world objects. And Mr. Chu will guide the graphics design students a bit more through some of those components to come. I just want to make sure that use gravity is enabled, because that is going to, when I press play, allow the physics system to start behaving on this object. And there's the ball, and notice it following the contours of that hill and then rolling off the side. Beautiful. So my camera right now is kind of facing from a kind of a strange perspective over there. Maybe I will actually swing this guy over here. Going to zoom around. Oh, my key wasn't pressing properly. I'm going to zoom it down here, get it in place like this, and actually fully rotate it. Not that way. I'm going to reset my rotation really quick under my transform so that it's not facing the wrong direction. Face this ball and back it up a little bit more. All I'm trying to do here is get a nice perspective to see this physics working properly so I can see it kind of rolling down this hill a little bit more. Let's try there for now. And here's the ball landing in the contours of the hill and rolling as you might expect a ball to roll on a hill like this in the real world. So quick recap, what have we done? We've positioned our assets, our object and our camera, so that we can see it in the gameplay, because physics only works when the game is running. We've ensured that there's colliders on both objects, otherwise one will pass right through the other. Let's just see if I turn off the sphere collider, what's going to happen as a result. And I recommend you play around with things like this just to get a sense of things. It's going to go right through the world because it doesn't know to collide. And finally, we attached a rigid body, which is going to allow the physics system to do its thing.